Please listen carefully.
Hello and welcome to the Cultural Stew Podcast, a bi-weekly cultural entertainment podcast where we give you recommendations, giving you our take on what we think is worth carving out your time for, also what we think you can pass on, and, maybe go cut that lawn instead.
Warning, there may be spoilers ahead.
My name is Ron Herkins Jr., and I would like to welcome you to the Cultural Stew Podcast. I'm here today with my co-hosts, Val Vidmar and Tony Carter. I am a photographer, a filmmaker, and I come to this from that background. I love movies, and I've been watching them for a very long time, and they have influenced me greatly. Tony, tell us a little about who you are.
Let's see. I'm a writer and a director, and I come from that background. I love movies and musicals, and I'm a theater geek, some people may say. I love to watch things other people won't watch. I love foreign films. And I love watching just about anything. So you can come to me and ask me anything about those things. Also, rare facts about movies, that's my thing too. And I think that's about it.
And Val, who are you?
I'm a Jayhawk. Anyway, I graduated from the University of Kansas. And the background is film theory and English degrees, which basically I never used in any of my jobs until now. But that's my background. I've been watching movies, again, like all of us, I guess, for our entire lives, and probably a little bit more than the average Joe. And I write poetry, prose, and I'm kind of like an inspiring playwright who struggles with writer's block a lot. But that's me.
It's taken me about 5 years to get to this point where I've been comfortable to actually put together a podcast. I'm grateful I was actually able to find two people who are just as excited about talking about whether it be film, TV, music, anything, and trying to figure out what we wanted to do with the podcast and deciding that maybe we can just give our recommendations, whether it's something that is good or not. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit of news. We're going to go through our watch list, discuss the couple winners, couple of the contenders in the upcoming award season, and maybe a couple things that we want to pass on. We're going to switch over to one of our topics today. We're going to talk about critics and the rating systems, and then we're going to talk about a media of the week that we all watched, Dunkirk. And we're also going to talk about a few things to look forward in the upcoming weeks. So let's move on to the news. So what big things happened this week, Val?
I was going to talk about the SAG Awards, which are on tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. They're at TNT and TBS. And I have my picks, but I'm not sure if anybody's interested. I can give you a little trivia that tonight, actually, 3 Billboards and Lady Bird are the only ones that are up for the top 3 awards. And if they think that 3 Billboards is going to take all 3, that's actually only the 4th time that's ever happened. Which I personally have down as my picks. And another interesting tidbit is if Frances McDormand wins, then she will be the only woman who's won twice. The SAGs are pretty new. I mean, they didn't come around till like the mid-90s. So
right around the time Fargo came around. They created it just for her.
Yeah, yeah. But, so that's kind of interesting. I do think that 3 Billboards is going to do very well tonight.
I'm not a huge SAGs person. It's not something I've ever watched before. I did take a quick glance at the list. Couple of my thoughts on that. Gary Oldman, if he doesn't win that, I retire from watching awards and believing in awards ever. Best actor, hands down this year. A couple surprises that I saw on there. Mary J. Blige for Mudbound. Mm-hmm. I think we've all seen Mudbound here. Fantastic film, and her role was great in that. And just to see her name on the list, I was like, she got nominated. That's great.
Agreed.
Have you all seen Get Out?
Yes.
I have not.
Oh yeah. Oh, such a good movie. That's actually one of the surprising, probably top 5 of the year films. But it's on there, and then Millie Bobby Brown and Laura Linney. It's nice to see the kid getting some good nomination there, and Laura Linney is the surprise Ozark nomination.
Yeah.
Ozark, I enjoyed the show.
I did too.
Thought it was great. I thought it was well written, and to see her getting a little bit of love was good. Some other awards coming up. We got the Grammys coming January 28th. I don't follow the Grammys a lot. I kind of scrolled through the list today. It just was literally just a scroll for about 20 minutes till I got down to the bottom, which was the stuff I was interested in, which was musical theater and scoring, to see what was on the list. Dear Evan Hansen, if it doesn't win, it's a shame. The music is probably the best thing out there, but Pasek and Paul getting all the love all the way across. They are on there for Dear Evan Hansen, but they're also on there for La La Land and City of Stars. So they're going to clean up in the Grammys. So they're going to be, let's see, they'll have a Tony, they'll have a Oscar, they'll have a Grammy, and they're only missing the one thing out of that.
Is it Emmy?
Emmy.
The only thing they're missing is the Emmy. So that's a pretty impressive for a group that in the last couple of years just came out of the middle of nowhere. And I think they're a great writing tandem, and it's great to hear their music come out.
How old are they? They're young kids.
They're young. They're probably in their mid-30s at most.
At most.
Following up the Grammys, we got the BAFTAs on February 18th. Not really interested in it, but it's always a good predictor going forward to see what's going to be coming up on the Oscars on March 4th. The nominations come out this Tuesday, and it'll be interesting to see who's going to get nominated for what. You don't have that flexibility that you have with the other award show like Golden Globes with a couple extra categories. You don't end up with the SAGs where you have a couple extra categories. This is the down and dirty to see who's going to actually
I believe that if the 5 women that they think are going to get nominated will be the first time since 1977, I believe, that the 5 lead actresses are actually in the 5 major motion picture, the best in the best in show.
So the 5 nominated best motion pictures are also going to be the 5 nominated women.
Yeah, that hasn't happened in a long time.
Are they going to stop the extended Best Picture nominations this year, or are they going to stick with the 5? Because I know they've been fluctuating numbers.
I think last year, didn't they say they brought it back from 10 because there just wasn't enough out there that was worth giving 10 to?
I think that they said that they would make it to 10, but they didn't have to fill the 10.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
And this year, I don't know if you'd get past 5. There's a lot of them out there that are, I would call good.
Yeah.
But great.
Not really.
No. So we're going to have our little preview on the 18th. We are actually recording on March 4th, which is actually Oscar Day. So we'll give you our picks and what we think is going to happen. So we're all looking forward to the nominations on Tuesday to see what's coming out. Let's see, what else? We had Dolores. I am going to butcher her name. Do you know how to pronounce her name right? Dolores O'Riordan, the lead singer of the Irish band Cranberries, died on Monday. She was 46. I remember getting into music when I first kind of broke off from my parents' music. My parents dragged me along with oldies music and country music until I was about 10 or 11, and I started kind of getting into my own thing. And she was among one of the first groups I kind of discovered outside of that little bubble.
She was my college experience. She's linked to some things that are kind of close to my heart there. That's all. You have girls that are all in a dorm and listening to this music, and some of us aren't here anymore. So, I don't know. It's one of those things where her music brings back a lot of good feelings. So it's a sad thing. But we don't know what happened, correct?
All I read was it was unexpected and sudden. That was the last things I saw on it.
Yeah.
So, 46 years old.
Yeah.
So, any new trailers this week that you saw?
I saw a lot of trailers. I saw trailers for, let's see here, Winchester, which is coming out actually on my birthday, which is like a horror movie.
January 28th?
February 2nd.
February 2nd. Okay.
Yeah. And then I saw
I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, though. Winchester. So we'll save that a little bit later, why I'm looking forward to that movie.
Why? You can talk about it right now?
I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The little secrets until later. And then I did see Leisure Seeker, which I thought, has anybody seen that preview for Leisure Seeker?
Is that the one with Helen Mirren also?
Yeah.
And
Donald
Donald Sutherland?
Yeah, that actually looks heartwarming. And I saw the Red Sparrow trailer with, give me her
Jennifer
name.
Lawrence, yeah.
Thank you. Who does she goes through a lot of transformations in that movie.
I'm looking forward to the Red Sparrow. That one kind of intrigues me a little bit to see her
Intriguing.
breaking a little bit from character.
Yeah, she's definitely.
It read well, too. I actually read the screenplay for that.
Did it?
It read very well.
Good.
Surprising.
Who wrote it?
I don't have a name offhand. I should.
It's all good.
But yeah, very suspenseful read. Very long, but very rewarding at the end. So,
Okay, good to know. I also saw the 1517 to Paris. That's Clint Eastwood's. I thought that looked good. I mean, I have like a plus sign after that.
Is he back?
No, he's directing it.
He's directing it, and the actors that are the main actors are the actual people that had the experience.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
I didn't know that.
There was a couple things, even watching the trailer, that I'm like, I could use a good actor. But hey, it's all worth it to see what's going to come in the end. New Tomb Raider trailer came out. I'm a action geek, so I'm looking forward to that one. It's been a while since Angelina Jolie was Tomb Raider, and now it's Alicia
Vikander.
Thank you. That's the name. It's looking good. I think the second trailer fixed some of the flaws of what they released with the first trailer.
I prefer Alicia over Angelina, actually. I mean, I saw Angelina, I said, wow, we're just going for the body, but the story, when I was watching those, didn't overwhelm me. But Alicia looks like they're actually having a story. They're really delving in. I mean, it's based on a video game, and I played almost all of her video games from PlayStation to the present. So I'm excited to see that transition from CGI to real life. And I think Alicia fits the character more. She's not too tall, not too short, the right build.
And outside of Alicia, it's got two of my other top favorite actors in there. I mean, Walter Goggins. Did you ever see Justified?
No.
Probably one of my top 10 written shows ever.
Really?
It was clever, and Goggins is probably one of the best actors on TV and streaming realm. And to see him taking on a film role, as the big bad guy in this film. So so other things that came out, we got some new Jack White music this week, a couple of his singles. I'll talk about his music later. Blade Runner 2049 came out on Blu-ray and 4K. I almost picked that up the other day, but instead I picked up Dunkirk. But it's on my list of things to pick up. That is my hands down pick for best cinematography of the year. It is just a fantastic movie.
Dunkirk?
No,
Blade Runner. Okay.
Blade Runner 2049.
I just am still upset about the fact the director's cut's not coming out. There is no director's cut. He decided against it. The director.
Is it the director or the studio?
I would say the director. I mean, I think that the director's cut, that's up to him.
Why would you want a director's cut
Well,
on that one?
Because it's the first movie that I ever bought. So it was on VHS. It was my first movie, and it was the director's cut of the first Blade Runner. And so I guess I was feeling nostalgic and wanting to have the same My husband says that I just want more of Ryan, which is possible.
I think if they were to put out any alternate cut, it would probably be a studio cut because it was long.
Right. He said
a
he wanted...
director's cut was longer, and that's what we ended up getting. I feel what we got was actually the director's cut, because the studios will typically lean you toward making a shorter cut because it'll get more people to watch the film.
Well, they had 2 movies worth of a film.
Yeah.
So it would have been interesting.
So I got that. Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm a big TV buff when it comes to Marvel films and Marvel shows, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now is ranking this season as the highest Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is good. That means good things for it for the future. And it's nice to see something successful that came from the Marvel Universe be able to go forward. However, Marvel's Inhumans is probably going to get canceled as probably the worst thing that Marvel has ever put out on TV. I love a couple of the actors in it, but it just did not play well on TV.
Bad writing or direction?
Bad story.
Okay.
I mean, there wasn't anything really good. And when you got a person who, I'm going to blank on his name, he was in Hell on Wheels, who took over the lead as the actor plays Black Bolt in Inhumans. And, Black Bolt doesn't say a word. And you have a great actor who it's just all physical presence.
Oh.
It's kind of hard, and I think that might have been, with a really sappy story. And, they cut off Medusa's hair in the first episode. So she's Medusa without any hair for the whole thing. So it's they had this whole CGI budget, and they blew it to make Medusa's hair for the first episode to get it cut off so that they can not have to produce her hair for the rest of the episodes.
Bad decisions.
So a lot of bad decisions on that. All right, so that wraps up our news. Now we're going to go talk about what we saw over the last couple weeks. So Tony, what'd you see?
I saw 3 billboards outside Ebbing. So that's won Best Drama at the Golden Globes this year, Best Actress, and Best Supporting Actor, and Best Screenplay. I was kind of blown away by it. This is the first Martin McDonagh film that had heart. I've seen his other attempts, and this one I think had more weight, and it wasn't just Francis crying and emoting and being angry. I mean, at the ending of the film, where Sam and Francis come together, their characters, and they sort of reconcile their differences, came a long way for me, and I think that Sam did a phenomenal job. I mean, there's a lot of actors who play racist, and then they have a change of heart, but Sam's character actually really did it about face in a natural way. It wasn't like forced, like, okay, now I have to change my heart. It was like, it was there all along, but it had to be opened up. And we didn't really understand why Sam's character was racist or what he actually did. It was he say, she say, and a lot of debate, and we knew he did something wrong. But at the end of the day, he made a choice and sacrificed himself for the better good, and I like that. Woody Harrelson also surprised me a lot in this film.
I loved him in this movie.
He plays usually a lot of the same, but he... Within all that, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just felt when I saw him in this movie, I felt like it was one of my top picks for him in a movie that I've seen him do. I just really enjoyed him in this movie.
Between him and Sam were doing this ping pong back and forth with each other too, what I liked, where we have one extreme and then a softer extreme. And I think between the 3 of them, Francis, Woody, and Sam, I think they carried the film. I mean, I love Peter a lot, but I felt Peter was underused. Peter Dinklage was underused in this film, but I think everything came together acting-wise, and it took Martin's screenplay and took it to a different level. Reading it, it was totally different from actually seeing it, which is usually the case, but I think these actors took what he had and gave it really, like I said, heart, and I would give that a see it.
Awesome. How about you, Val? What'd you watch this week?
I went to go see Call Me By Your Name. Which was actually recommended to me by a couple of friends. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to this one next. And I loved it. I went to go see it actually at Pittsford, and there were probably 5 of us in there. And there's a lot to say about this movie, but I feel like it was so meaningful to me, I guess, because it touches on so many things that we've all, well, at least that I've felt in my life, like with the first love and the anticipation, or not quite, and the confusion of love, and how you're feeling, because you're kind of breaking your heart open at the beginning of when you fall in love. It's a scary thing, and being confused, and especially in this case when you have a 17-year-old boy who has feelings for, I think he's probably, Armie Hammer is probably 22, playing a 22-year-old. He's coming in, they're in Italy, and he's coming in for the summer and to help his father. They have students come in for the summer, every summer. So this is how he meets them, and it's just the relationship that progresses. His parents are fantastic people. I think it's worth seeing if you just go to see the ending, and the father and how he deals with his heartbroken son, which I won't give away why he's heartbroken, I suppose. But his speech to his son at the end of the movie is phenomenal. The writing is, I just said to somebody that I was going to print out the speech and frame it and put in my home.
You said this was based on a book?
Yeah, it's based on the book. In fact, I'm actually listening to the book right now, and Armie Hammer is narrating it. So it actually gives you a lot more, it fills in a lot of questions I had. So it really does a good job of like, oh, okay. You're like wondering, I had questions too. Like, why is he acting this way? Why is this happening? And now I'm understanding a lot more.
That's the typical hitch when you have a book that's being transitioned to a movie. Things are going to be left out, and it's up to the director and what is going to be the key things that he pulls out and ends up putting in that movie, and what can the audience fill in the gaps with.
It was really, I felt like the ending was particularly poetic. I feel like maybe I'm pulling too much into it. It reminded me, the shot is of the kid sitting in front of the fire after his father basically tells him, you don't shove these feelings away. If you're feeling these pain, feel these feelings. And so he's sitting in front of the fire. The fire's reflecting in his face, and in the background, there's a window with snow coming down, and they had just shown you scenes where the snow was covering up all of their landscaping out there, and I just felt like, here it is, he's warming up, he's trying to ward off all of the snow, all of that cold that comes into and covers up, and his eyes are filling with tears, and I don't know, it was really moving. I thought it was a great shot.
So what's your bottom line?
Go see it.
Okay. Moving on, I finally caught Marvelous Mrs Maisel this week. This has been on my list for a little while, and I guess kind of the kick in the ass by the Golden Globes was to actually finally watch it. Hilarious. It's got Rachel Brosnahan, Alex Bornstein, Tony Shalhoub, and Marion Hinkle, among others. A lot of bit actors that have been in plenty of things pop up here and there. It's, a creation of Amy Sherman Palladino, who is of Gilmore Girls fame, which to me means nothing, but to my wife means everything. And that was kind of her, as soon as she realized that, it's Gilmore Girls, she had to watch it. So it gave me an excuse to basically, as we had free time this week, to sit there and watch it. And the one thing I have to say about this is phenomenal writing. The speed of which the actors talk, especially Rachel Brosnan's character as Mrs. Maisel, it's so snappy and so witty. And then to watch and examine as she transitions to trying to become a comedian. And the heartaches that she goes through as she breaks up with her husband, and she brings that raw stuff into her act as she's just discovering how funny she is, are the best pieces of the show. You know, she walks drunk on the stage for the first time, is absolutely hilarious. So she completely rips apart her family, she rips apart her husband, and it's just raw and real. And it's something that, you know, I'm not around the comedian world, so I don't get to see that. And, you know, of course it's fictionalized, but it's based on pieces and events of real comedians' lives, and they have Lenny Bruce kind of being threaded throughout the whole season. And the guy who plays Lenny Bruce is solid. I don't have his name off the hand, but he's solid throughout the whole season, and he plays a big role in shaping what ends up becoming the key point right at the end of the show. And I highly recommend the show. It's phenomenal writing, phenomenal acting.
What year does it take place?
1958, 1960 range, I think.
Well, I feel like that makes a big difference.
In terms of a set piece and a time piece, I think it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And you know, it makes a huge difference. You know, the fathers reference the war and the stuff that they were involved with during that. And, you know, she's a Jewish girl, and all that comes with being a Jewish New Yorker is just entrenched in her, and being an upscale Jewish New Yorker even more.
And breaking out and being able to do this.
And yeah, it's basically you just watching the walls of her life just come crumbling down to the point where she's raw, and she's fighting with that whole, you know, I'm high society, and going forward. So it's on my list as a highly recommended. See it. It's streaming on Amazon Prime right now, and I can't wait for season 2.
Awesome. I saw 2 episodes. I'm 2 episodes in, so I'm ready to keep going forward.
And my wife had something to do yesterday, and I snuck in the last episode, just so I can get it in. And I was glad I did, because the ending of how everything wraps up for season 1 was totally worth it.
That's good.
So,
How many episodes are there?
8.
8. Nice number.
Yes. And they're about an hour long.
Okay.
So, but they're solid shows. I mean, their music is good choice selection.
Okay.
So, on to round 2. Val, what did you see?
I went to go see The Post, which...
Steven Spielberg.
Okay, so here's the thing with Steven Spielberg.
I love Spielberg.
Okay, even though I sat and watched the Golden Globes and sat and saw them all at the table, I just was not connecting. Nothing connected at all to my brain, because that happens when you are dealing with little children and, yeah, in a house that's under construction constantly. So when I went to see the movie, I knew I was going to see Hanks and Streep. I will say that Meryl Streep, I am a Meryl Streep fan, but she was fantastic. If you're going to see it, then she's the reason to see it. Hanks was okay. My problem with it was that I kind of sat there thinking that everything looked really, for lack of a better word, staged. Like they looked like they were trying too hard to be in that time period. Like the cab driver, like front and center, he looked like, yes, you look like you have a fake mustache, and you look like your clothes are, like everything. I guess I was really dealing with details.
So it looked more like maybe a British 80s TV show.
Yeah, and the way they dealt with Nixon, you know, it's always outside the window looking in on, it's obvious that it's him with his profile and talking, and, you know, I just found it to be, when Steven Spielberg's name popped up at the end, I was shocked. I just kept thinking, you've got to be kidding me. How is somebody looking through their lens thinking that this is good? But
was it a rush job, you think?
I don't know. It seemed like it rushed to me, only because I felt like there were so many details Of course, we'll talk about it later, but there's so many details that were just like barely there. Or, if you compare it to like the scenery in The Shape of Water and all the detailing, there's nothing there. And you're basically just watching Meryl. And Meryl's a good reason to watch it. So if you love Meryl Streep, go see the movie.
There are times when movies do rush for Oscar time, and I call that Oscar baiting, or just Oscar bait. Steven has done that a couple times in the past, with Munich, for example. He does good work, he really does, but I think now Steven's at the point where he's just trying to do topical stuff, and I think, I mentioned this before, every generation has All the President's Men, and we had Spotlight a couple years ago, which I think was phenomenal. It was even-paced, the characters had heart, and even reading the film, it felt like they were just rushing to get this done because it's timely and because Trump and this and that. And
that was another thing I had issue with. The jabs. It's obviously jabs at Trump and versus the press and president versus the press, etc.
Bringing a lot of politics into it at this time of the year.
Yeah, and I felt like some of the lines that they had to deliver, like right in front of the screen, and he'd give them one-liners to have to come right in front of the screen and say it like as they're about to walk off. I felt like, oh God, like it was just, I'm in the minority.
You talk about Oscar baiting and Spielberg, and Spielberg has this thing that if you've looked at his career over the last 10 years, he kind of does things in pairs. He always does two movies kind of at the same time. And this year it's The Post and Ready Player One.
right.
And a couple years ago, it was BFG and Bridge of Spies.
Right.
Well, they're talking about a little news that came out today, I think it was today or yesterday, about his next two films. And I just kind of had to shake my head on his choice of what he's looking at. One is, of course, Indiana Jones 5. Harrison Ford is going to be like 90 by the time that movie's put out. I love Indiana Jones. I love Spielberg. I love Harrison Ford, but I think it's time to move on from them. And his other choice is West Side Story.
Oh.
And I cannot figure out for the life of me why would they even touch doing a remake on the West Side Story.
I don't know.
But those are the two things that he's looking at is his next pair of projects.
Is he doing it as a musical?
We don't know. The details, it's not confirmed. Nothing's come out as 100%. But
I hadn't heard that.
in his way of doing things in pairs, that's the looking forward. And when I saw the West Side Story attached to Steven Spielberg, I just kind of was like, that's not a pairing.
I had the same feeling when I saw Clint Eastwood attached to Jersey Boys. So that was the weirdest thing ever. My wife and I saw that movie. She loves Jersey Boys, we were watching it and cringing, like, why would Clint touch this? This is not his thing.
There's a lot of movies that I don't understand why people touch again. Just leave them alone. They're good as they are.
All right, moving on. I'm going to skip over my turn and let Tony tell us about our next.
Well, let's see. I saw The Disaster Artist by James Franco. He directed that. That seems to be his passion project.
I'm going to groan. I just want to put in my groan.
You can do it right now.
Right, groaning right now.
Well, James surprised me during this film. I mean, people can say, oh, he's playing a caricature of, Tommy, but, I mean, Tommy's easily able to be parodied and made fun of, because, I mean, his voice is unique, so you can say, oh, he's making fun of Tommy, but he's not. He's really invested. And this film is actually about the making of a film, which is great. Usually these films kind of fail, but I think the fact that Dave Franco, James's younger brother in the film, was with him, it helped bring it more seriousness, because Dave is trying to be serious, trying to be a good actor. Not saying that James isn't, but James usually goofs around a lot and improvises and makes a mess and he's high all the time. But I really felt the film was good. I really think that they really, for me, the friendship between Dave and James' characters, Tommy, and I forget his best friend's name, but that carried the film for me. That was more important than actually the hijinks of Tommy on set. Seeing them grow from being strangers to friends to saying, this is for you. And then the ending, which wasn't based in fact at all, is the ending was great for what it was, but knowing the history of the film, that payoff wouldn't happen until years later, like now. But they put it at the end of that film, in that past, to make it all come together. and it worked for me. So I would give that a see it.
Have you seen Ed Wood?
I have, yes.
Okay. Did you like that movie?
It was okay.
Okay. So there we're going to disagree there too. So we're definitely,
I think it's a generational thing. I mean, I appreciate what it was for and what it was, but it wasn't really like wow to me. But
this is what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
It's kind of that thing. But you're saying
I would see it again, just for the fact that
you would see it again.
I would see it again, like probably once or twice more, just for the fact that.
Are you kidding?
Not for James. Again, it's not the acting, because the acting seems like it's one big party. We're all friends. I mean, you have Seth Rogen in the film too, and you have all their buddies. It's more for the story itself, not the actors. It's the story.
Interesting.
I saw also this week was The End of the Effing World on Netflix. It's got Jessica Barden as the lead female, Alyssa, and Alex Lothar as her boyfriend. Really, 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 really interesting piece, series. It starts off with Alex, basically all the characters are giving voiceover narrations and telling what their actions are going to be and what they're thinking at the moment. So you have these quick cuts of everything that's going on, and it starts off with Alex being a very not suicidal, a psychopath, and wanting to basically kill Alyssa, and how he's going to do it. And in the process of that, they become boyfriend, girlfriend, and he decides to delay that out and kill her at a later date as they romp around the country trying to find, or romp around the countryside trying to find her father. I really did not like it. I thought I was going to. I love British series. I think they're hilarious, especially dark comedy. This one at times made me uncomfortable just because the whole time you're watching two teenagers. Mm-hmm. And some of the situations that come up in terms of two teenagers is just like, well, you know what? I really don't like what I'm watching here. But I stuck it out and just watched to the end just to give a fair assessment on it. And my take is leave it. Don't bother with it. It's not something I would and not something I would recommend.
How long is it?
8 episodes. 8 half-hour episodes.
Not bad.
So it goes by quick, but.
So was it the writing, you think, or just the situation that the writing chose to put them in?
The writing is witty. It's smart. For me, it just didn't fly. I didn't appreciate watching teenagers in that. Like, if they changed the setting and it was maybe college-age people, I'd feel more comfortable. But the fact that it was teenagers and they're, you're talking about sex situations, you're talking about murdering people and their parents, and it's just like I didn't really want to deal with it.
But you kept with it.
I kept with it just because I'm like, I got to see how this ends.
So it kept your interest at least then.
I'll watch really crappy stuff all the way through.
I can't do that.
There's a couple things where I'll turn it off, but this, I think I might have zoned out for episodes 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I realized it was in episode 7. I'm like, well, I might as well finish it. Because sometimes even if you stretch it out and hold on, maybe there's a redeeming episode later on that you're like, oh, okay.
But none?
Maybe, no, not a thing.
Okay.
Another movie I watched this week is 12 Strong. I have a man crush on Chris Hemsworth, and I'll probably see pretty much anything that he's in. I just think he's one of those guys that if he was in the 30s or 40s, he'd be plastered over every billboard, and he'd be the strong man. And he is to a degree, but there's so many out there right now that he kind of gets lost in the mix when he does something that's not Thor or Marvel. So to see him take on this lead role. But the real strength of this movie came in, it's got Michael Shannon, it's got Michael Pena in it. Directed by Nikolai Fuglisig. I can't pronounce his name. Never seen anything of his, don't recognize his name. So it was really interesting. The only reason I'm really calling this one out is at this point, over the last 10 years, I'm kind of burned out by war movies. There's been a lot of them, and It's very hard for a movie to actually stand out as something different. This actually stood out as something just a tad bit different, and it was worth watching it. Michael Pena gets all the good lines. You know, there's a little bit of humor inflected, and Michael Pena is the typical guy to get those humor lines. You know, you watch Ant-Man, he gets the humor lines. But
12 Strong is meaning...
12 Strong is the story of the horse soldiers that were the first battalion that went in during the invasion into Afghanistan.
Okay.
After the towers fell in 2001. So it tells about this division that, you know, they go in, they're trying to get to Mozar Sharif and the taking of that. And it really, the key part of it is Hemsworth's relationship with the lead warlord, and, you know, how Hemsworth goes from being this guy who's never been in battle to this old guy who basically said, comes down to something like, you get your orders from all these other people that are above you. I get my orders from God. And it was Hemsworth, you know. You
can't really compete with that.
Yeah, grappling that, yeah, here I am. He's a new guy, but he's the captain of this whole team, and he's got war-hardened members on his team. And it just... Is it something I would say see it in theaters? Don't rush to see it in theaters. But if it comes out on video, streaming, put it on your queue list. I mean, I wouldn't say skip it just because it, like I said, it's among war movies. It's something that actually stands out. It's not going to get the greatest reviews, I think, mainstream. Probably mainly because there's been a lot of movies over the last 10 years. And there's a couple good ones. There's American Sniper is one of them that kind of stood out over the last 10 years.
No.
No?
No. I'm going to wholeheartedly disagree with that one.
But the point is there's very, very few. And, you know, they don't shy away from the graphic violence. It's full on in your face.
How was cinematography?
It was okay. I mean, it wasn't nothing special that stood out.
Okay.
The key moments for me were one of the battle scenes where, you know, they're riding the horses straight on through the battle scenes, and, you know, watching that part of the cinematography stood out. You know, it was a good use of some slow motion mixed with some nice wide shots. Looked good. But the rest of the movie, it was just, you know, they filmed it in New Mexico, so it's going to look like the desert, and it's going to look the same. So there's nothing that really stands out.
Can you talk to me about William Fichtner?
Oh.
Billy
The
Fichtner.
biggest mistake in the whole movie, they shaved William Fichtner's head. And he does not look good with a bald head. And so every time he was on screen, he just stood out like a sore thumb. He's usually mainly had long hair,
right,
or at least shoulder-length hair, and they just shaved his head. I don't know. It was a weird decision. I know they base these things after true stories, and, you know, maybe the person that they based him off had shaved hair, or maybe William Fichtner is doing something else that he needed a shaved head. But it was just one of those decisions that stick out. Like, why?
Distracting. Okay.
Yeah, it was very distracting because he looks. If you watch the Coneheads when they used to be on, they have a cone head completely flattened.
Oh
God!
It just, some people just can't pull off a bald look.
Billy, no.
He was one of them. So
I met Billy during Go, so that's when I first saw him, and he's come a long way. Billy's come a long way in his acting.
It was a film around here he just did, right?
I think.
Or was it Buffalo?
Buffalo, yes. Okay. And he went to Brockport for a time, and Criminal Justice.
I love him as an actor. He's one of my favorite actors, but just...
Not to hear it.
It was a decision that I was like, I don't know what the heck they're doing.
So I saw Shape of Water, Del Toro's latest film, and I would say now that's one of the most beautiful films I've seen all year.
Agreed.
I mean, everything came together for that film. The sound, the set, the acting, everything, every small detail. I mean, they shot that up in Hamilton and Toronto, my two favorite places in Canada, and you wouldn't know it. But it's supposed to be taking place in Baltimore, actually, and it's just gorgeous. I mean, Sally Hawkins was just phenomenal. I mean, she played mute, but it didn't matter. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie, well, I have several, but comic-wise, I think her just flicking off, Michael Shannon's character, just signing F you, just priceless to me. It made me laugh, and a lot of people who were there were like, huh, in the theater, but I'm like, if you know the context, you're paying attention, you know exactly what she's saying, and
Of course.
That just sold me right there. I'm like, wow, this is clever. And Del Toro wasn't writing alone this time, thank goodness, which I like his films, but he needs help writing a lot. So Vanessa Taylor helped him with that. And just everyone, the music, Desplat has done a lot of work, and you can tell it's his music, but...
The music played a big part in
Right.
it, I felt like.
Desplat won for Golden Globe, right?
He did, yes.
There were some moments in that movie that were just the little dancing scene
Right.
at dinner, and just even I felt like dancing. They also had this thing where she walks by and sees shoes on display, and then they have the kind of same thing with her roommate with Jenkins.
Yes.
And he sees desserts on display. It's just kind of funny the way his
Repetition throughout the film.
and the fact that. Do you mind if I'm just gonna
Go ahead.
the fact that
There are no parties.
the fact that she's trying to explain why she wants to break him out of there, and how he sees her as whole. He doesn't see that there's anything wrong or anything missing from her, which is something that we all would want. Whereas she is mute, it comes across very, immediately. If you're trying to talk to her, you're going to know immediately. Where Jenkins is gay, and you wouldn't know unless he...
Yeah, you don't know it until you have the diner scene.
Yeah, and so, you know...
Everything is completely natural up to that point when he tries to hit on the guy, or he says, did he look at me? Did he look at me?
Yeah.
Did you see him looking at me?
Yeah, I mean, there are things that you can hide, things that you can't hide. And I felt like the colors that they used, the blues and the greens, were beautiful. And I felt the way they used the color of where they worked and made it grimy and gritty. And he has a lot of evil. He has a lot of evil in his movies. And that bothers me. Like, I know that there's evil in the world, but man, when he, toward the end, when the...
Michael Shannon?
Gets shot through.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
scientist.
The scientist. He gets shot through the cheek, and Michael Shannon basically picks him up like a fish and is pulling him. Like, that's how you would pick up a fish. I thought that was interesting.
Small little details.
That was a rough scene.
That was rough. I mean, there's a lot of things that are really beautiful in it, and things that weren't explained that all at once were like her neck. And then, oh my God. And then all at once she can breathe.
It reminded me of Amelie, but an adult version of
Amelie.
Amelie.
Oh my gosh! I totally was
like an
thinking
adult version
Amelie.
of Amelie. Like the colors, the
Yes.
cinematography, the whimsy, everything.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking that when she was in the bus. All at once I was thinking, this reminds me of Amelie. I wasn't sure why. But just the details of everything. And even her walking and doing
The tapping.
the tap dancing. And I went home and showed my daughter the step dance with Shirley Temple. So I loved it too.
I mean, if it doesn't win for production design or art direction, I'll be very surprised. But that's an auteur director's vision. Just everything, every small little detail was placed, and it was perfect for me. Best picture quality? I mean, maybe, but I just loved it. I loved how it looked, how it felt, and I left it, theater thinking, wow, that's what a film can be, and that's what it should be. That's entertainment, but it didn't really. It had a message, but it wasn't like in my face message. It was like I can just sit back and relax.
Yeah, I wasn't. I felt like I was overwhelmed by. That's where the music comes in, and the colors are coming out at me. The music is coming out at me. The characters are coming out at me. It just moves along really nicely. I thought it was really beautiful. And your thoughts? Do you have thoughts on this?
I'll be the dissenting one here.
Okay.
Me and my wife went out to see this, and I'll agree. It is fantastically, it's a solidly well-made movie. It's a fantastically beautiful set piece. The CGI is gorgeous. The creature is fantastic. It's probably one of his best work. And to see Doug Jones.
Yes, Doug Jones.
Basically taking a lead role. I mean, here's a guy who's been nothing but creatures pretty much his whole life.
Hellboy.
Hellboy, he's on Star Trek Discovery. But at the end of the day, I don't know if it was the mood of how I was in that day. I just got nothing. I got a little bit from the movie, but nothing that's like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever seen. So I don't know how much my mood that day played into it. I'm going to have to watch it again when it comes out on film or on video, but
pay attention to like some of the tie-ins they have. Like they have the beginning where they show her life and the fact that she's only finding pleasure in water. Like, and then at the end she finds love in water. Like it ties into that whole thing.
It's like a fairy tale.
It's like
an adult fairy tale.
Here's where she's finding pleasure. It happens to be in water. And then I don't know about the egg thing.
It's protein and just
eggs were representing something there.
Fertility, probably.
Yeah, something going on there.
yeah. So I'll watch it again, but like to me, it wasn't if somebody asked me, I wouldn't have told them to rush out to the theater to go see it. It's something I think you can get just as much out of it renting it at home.
Okay, we're saying no. Go see it in the movie theater. The bigger the screen, the better.
I would think so, yeah.
So.
Okay. And that's how we do it here. We're not all agreeing on the same thing.
Definitely not. Obviously. Where are we going next?
Greatest Showman.
Oh, The Greatest Showman. Okay, so I've seen this movie. I've seen this movie 3 times because...
Are you sure it's only 3?
It is. Now, when the soundtrack came out, we started... my daughter is 7 years old, and my other daughter's... Oh my gosh, I said she was 7. She's 8. She's 8. My other daughter's 5. But Zoe loves musicals, and so I could see this coming. So we were listening to the music. We had all the music to listen to before we went to see the movie. So I took her, just she and I, the first time to see if Harper could actually go, and we had a great time. I wasn't going to go in and try to critique everything and just... But I had a great time. The music was great. I think I like every song. I'm pretty sure. I don't think there's anything I particularly skip. But Hugh Jackman is very entertaining, and Zac Efron, he looked different. That was the hair, something going on. I'm not sure. He looked a little different.
He has muscles.
Yes. Michelle Williams, beautiful voice. The one thing I will say is the disappointing factor of, give me her name. She plays the opera star.
Yes.
Okay.
Ingrid.
Yes. That was when I saw it in the movie. It was captivating. Then to find out that it wasn't her singing was I thought about not telling Zoe, but then I told her to show, this is how real movies are made.
I'll give him credit for this. The lip syncing for that.
Oh my gosh, incredible.
I was completely fooled.
I've
watched people do the voiceovers like that, and even the people that really sang their parts later on in the film, she looked better than some of them.
She did.
It was like, holy cow.
That was gorgeous. And even knowing, because we knew the second and the third time we saw it, we took Jason to see it because he was actually interested after listening to the soundtrack on repeat all the way to Cleveland, that I still couldn't tell. I kept looking, trying to find her slip up, and it was beautiful. But it's just entertaining. It's fun. You don't worry about anything. Now,
and of course, who wrote it?
Is it historically factual? No.
And who wrote the music?
the same boys. It's
Classic and Paul again.
My boys. Because Zoe and I also went to see La La Land 3 times as well. So, she said, I could go see The Greatest Showman every single day. But yeah.
I've only seen it once. My daughter's probably seen it 5 or 6 times now. I mean, like, that's all she was talking about for about 2 weeks was, like, I want to go see it. So she would just go with her grandmother or her friend, and they'd go and see it. As a one-off, just going into the theater and seeing it, I loved it. I got more out of that as a feeling than I did watching The Shape of Water.
Oh, sure. And I'm glad that you actually posted that you saw it and loved it, because I think that kind of gave Jason a push to go.
Now, in terms of story, there's a lot that's left out. There's a lot that you desired about the whole background on that.
That's fine.
But just as straight as a musical and just going to listen to the music, I think it's a strong piece to watch. Of course, by the time you're listening to this, it's probably going to be rolling out of theaters, so it's not going to be in there much longer. So wait to see it on video and invite your friends over and your family over and just have a good time watching it.
They're going to have a sing-along one. They're going to have a sing-along because they do that. So that will be fun.
As long as it's not Frozen, I'm okay.
I know. But I think the sing-along version will be quite fun too. So.
All right. Well, that wraps up our watch list, and we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about our topic, our media of the week, and wrap it up. Okay, and welcome back. Today's topic, we are going to be talking about critics and rating systems. Tony, tell me about some of the ones that you know about out there.
I usually stick with Rotten Tomatoes, and that's because it's easy and simple. They have all the reviews I need right there, and I can just scroll through each one and read them. And Rotten Tomatoes takes all the reviews and puts them together in one place, and they aggregate them, so they don't review films, they just gather. And I know a lot of people have given them some slack for Last Jedi, but it's not their fault. Critics speak and audiences speak, and they just put it out there for you.
How much weight do you put on reviews and critics? I mean, how much does that influence your decision to go see a particular movie?
It really doesn't at all, actually. I read the review to see how they're worded and see if someone's pepping themselves out to studios, which means they're putting out blurbs like Best Film of the Year when it's January 3rd. But I generally just read for plot details. Like sometimes reviewers give out little snippets of information I may want to know. But I just read to be entertained, and then I go see it on my own. It's usually the actors or the writing that gets me to see a film.
So you usually stick with Rotten Tomatoes. You go in there and dig through the reviews and figure out, the one or the critics that you want to follow and go through there. How about you, Val?
I am also a Rotten Tomatoes. I go in and I just take it a little bit of a gander. I don't read too much before I see the movie. I've been known to take a look at it and go, oh, maybe we shouldn't see this. But I feel like if it's over 50%, then okay, it's 13%. I'm probably not going to waste my time. I will say that, which is maybe not good of me. But I don't, until Roger Ebert passed away. I guess he was the one that I read. And then he passed away, and I haven't really read anyone else. I was an Ebert lady. But, so I kind of look them over, and I don't read a lot of the criticisms, I guess.
Me personally, I've always tried to stay away from reading reviews before I go and see a movie. My typical going into a film is I see a trailer I like. If it interests me enough, or there's a certain director or a certain actor, I put them on my list, and those I'm going to see them pretty much regardless. And the problem that I hate is, if you go to schedule something in Fandango has the Rotten Tomatoes score right there.
Yeah.
So it's like subconsciously is feeding my criticism or review going in before I go to see it. But I really don't have one that I go to constantly. I kind of just recently discovered Metacritic and CinemaScore, who are also they're aggregation sites as well. CinemaScore basically gives a letter rating, and Metacritic does the whole 0 to 100%. But they all do the same thing. They find critics. Has there been any critics? You've gotten Roger Ebert. I don't have any critics that stand out to me that says I'm always going to trust the review. I've kind of just become to the point where a lot of the critics that I've reviewed, they're kind of uppity and snippety, and some movies that I think are good, they just kind of stick a nose at and turn around, and some things that they praise as great, I just end up being like, that's a snooze fest. I have no interest in seeing it, and no matter what praise you're going to give it, I'm not going to go see it.
Example, The Post. I will say that going in to see that movie and having complete a brain that's not remembering a ton, and then finding out it was Steven Spielberg, it was an interesting way of seeing it. Had I gone in thinking, oh, this is a Steven Spielberg movie, I wonder if I would have gone in with, rosier glasses than I have. So
I know I probably would have. My wife still wants to see it, so we'll probably end up seeing it. But by the time we get to the theaters, it's going to probably be out of theaters. But yeah, Spielberg is one of those. If he's involved in the film as a director, I'm typically there. I want, he's my favorite director that I want to go see, and that does influence you as well. We've had an interesting discussion this week as we try to put together, this being our first podcast, and trying to figure out how we want to talk about films. And, we each have our own little bit of a rating system, and we kind of put them down this week, I would say on paper, but it was actually in our browser windows. So as to the different weight that we actually give to films, to see if we can come up with something that we could share on our website that would be a solid scoring system for, at least for us, things that we... And at the end of the day, we found out that we were just a little bit off. And Val said
that I felt like we should just be dealing with questions that actually have to do with what you saw. I mean, I'm a feeler when it comes to movies. So, I want to know.
I think you'd make a good psychiatrist.
Oh, I've been told. I think it's probably because I go so much. So it helps.
We'll change you to Dr. Val. Val.
But I feel like there are things that when people talk about movies, they don't particularly talk like a film student would, which is kind of how we were trying to. And I kept thinking, gosh, this isn't going to work because, what kept you watching it? That's the question I asked you. What kept you watching this show that you didn't even like? So when you deal with questions, what brought me out of seeing The Post? Like, what was it that made me not believe in it? And a lot of it was the costuming and the way the film looked to me, and the way it just seemed like there's Tom Hanks, playing somebody. I just felt pulled out of it.
Yeah.
And then when I watched, let's see here, Shape of Water, the music brought me in. The music told me kind of what okay, now we're going to go this way. Now we're going to, dealing with the feeling of each shot almost. The colors in Dunkirk. When I was watching Dunkirk, which we'll talk about, I realized, but the colors just popped.
And when we looked at our scoring system, the one thing that became evident is, we all put a heavy weight on story and acting, and we all had our own views on the technicality of film. And the thing I found interesting with the question aspect of this is it's going to make me think about films a little bit differently, because I've never really thought of them on a deep question answer type basis. It's always been, you watch a movie, oh man, that music, stood out so much. It moved me in a way that if that music wasn't there,
right,
then it probably wouldn't have been the same film for me. So I'd put a heavy weight on the music, or, you see a certain look to a film in the cinematography. Like, you have a movie like Gladiator where the cinematography is just phenomenal. If you put different cinematography on that, you didn't put the same frame rates on that, you'd have a completely different film that I don't think would have worked as well. So going to the question and answer is going to make me think a little bit more deeper about films, and might even adjust what I eventually go see in the future.
I also feel like when the lights came on after The Shape of Water, I kind of was in an overload, and so I was talking to a friend right afterward, and I said, okay, I'm going to actually talk about a different movie because this needs to sit with me for a while. Like, some movies are, like, you have to sit with them for a little bit. So I feel like that's part of it too. Like, what are the movies that you can't really speak about directly afterward? Or what are the movies the lights came on and you're like, what the hell was that? Like, I seriously cannot believe I would just watch this shit.
So it's funny that you say when the lights came on, and I just remember the first thing after we watched Shape of Water. There's probably about a dozen of us in the theater, really tiny theater. So, when the person like 3 rows behind you says something, you can audibly hear it because you're not struggling it. And it was a very much okay.
Yeah, I heard laughing.
Nobody really knew kind of what to feel or what. I mean, we didn't have the laughing, but...
No, I had laughing in mine.
When I first started trying to come up with a way to score films, and one of my factors was audience reaction, and so I would purposely, I try to go to as many opening nights as possible in a film. I don't like waiting 3 months or 2 months down the road when the theaters, the audiences have thinned out and people have been talking about it. I like being right on the edge and being able to see what is the audience feeling with it, because their feeling sometimes influences my feeling of the movie.
Well, yeah. Speaking of which, do you enjoy seeing movies alone more than with people? See, I go to see movies by myself all the time.
I want to sit right in the middle of the theater, dead center, and be surrounded by people.
No, I meant...
however, you talk to me next to a movie, I will punch you in the face.
I mean, do you want to go with your wife? Or, I mean, I have to go to movies alone a lot because Jason has to stay with the girls, so I'm going to movies. But I've always gone to movies alone, which I enjoy because I don't worry so much about what the person next to me is feeling.
Yeah, I do go to a lot of movies without my wife or my girls because my wife has a completely different view of films than I do, and she has a very certain type of things that she'll go and see in theater with me. So, she's not going to sit through an action movie. She's not going to sit through war drama. Those kind of things. Those are my. So, I go and find something at 10 o'clock at night or a midnight showing and just go and watch them. That way, I take the family factor out of it, and I don't have to worry about what are my girls going to do? Why is my wife sitting there with the girls? And
my gosh, Jason gets up and leaves. He gets up and he gets up and leaves, and so I'm like, dude, it was 2 weeks in a row he got up and had to leave a theater because he was just like, nope, I'm not watching this. So that's a lot of it. I can just sit and watch and enjoy. Yeah,
I definitely do see them in that terms of seeing them on my own. Yeah, and even when I invite friends to come along with me to go see movies, it's just like the same thing. You say one word during the movie, I'm going to punch you in the face. 12 Strong, I was ready to walk out of the theater because the guy next to me, every other word that came out or whatever was happening on the screen, it was like, yeah, those are bad people. It's like constantly throwing narration things underneath. Now, there may have been stuff going on that I'm just not aware of, but in terms of that setting, it's like it kept taking me out of the movie for the first 15 minutes until all of a sudden he settled in, and then it started up about 45 minutes later, and I was like, I can't deal with this. So yeah, if you're going to be one of those, I rather would not go to the movie with you.
Our third time seeing The Greatest Showman, I turned to the women that were right next to us, and I said, we're going to probably sing during this movie. I hope that doesn't bother you. And I was joking, thinking that they were going to be like, oh. And they're like, not a problem. We'll probably join you. So I think it just depends. on definitely who's around you.
My thing is, I and my wife, we have different tastes too, but I spend at least 5 minutes finding my seat in the theater. Like I try to find the perfect spot. So I do the Sheldon snap, and I like sitting in the back, so I don't really, I can see the big picture as well as kind of forget people are there. Because if I have that straight on head vision, I'm easily distracted by things. So I sit in the back, I find my ground zero zone, and I just soak it in. When people talk during the movies, I kind of glare, or I'll put my hand up, with the finger point like that, and I'm not looking away from the screen, but I'm still wagging my finger. I also watch the credits of films. Like it's a respect thing for me, where I will purposely sit through all the final credits of the film. It's not for, I guess, a scene I'm looking for. It's just saying, these are my brothers and sisters in film, and they spent however long making this. And they may not get all the attention, but I'm going to honor them, respect them by watching their name go by, because they worked hard for it. And it may sound cheesy or weird, but
No.
that's a way for me to show respect, but also decompress before I go out to the real world and deal with real life, if that makes sense. So,
No, I think it makes total sense.
So, yeah, I mean, we all have our different influences on what the film are, and going back, this is how we're going to deal with it and going forward. We're going to have our own website set up, and we're going to answer these questions regarding a movie that we've seen. And instead of putting up a score, instead of putting up lettering, we're going to put up these questions, and we're going to talk about the film. And the same thing as we're doing here with our watch list. Once we release our episode podcast after we've talked about it, it's going to be a very simple bottom line. See it. What did I say? No.
skip it.
Skip it.
See it, skip it.
See it, skip it, or
Rainy day.
save it for a rainy day. There are several movies that I think are good that are in theaters, but it's just going to be just as good as you watching it on your couch at home. So skip the $12 fee of seeing it at the movies and rent it for $4 at home. You're not going to lose anything in that translation. There are certain movies that I think just deserve to be seen in the theater. And
Agreed.
speaking of films that deserve to be seen in certain formats, whether it be in the theater or at home in a nice setting with you and your family, leads us to this week's Media of the Week. Each show, we're going to focus on one thing that we all think, let's all watch this, and we're all going to give our own opinions on it and why we, whether we agree with it or we disagree with it, and just hash it out. It's going to be a little bit more in depth than our rounds that we just went through a little bit ago. So this week, we're talking about Dunkirk. Tony, take it away.
Dunkirk is directed by Christopher Nolan, scored by Hans Zimmer, and is starring Mark Rylance, Tom Hardy, Kenneth Branagh, James Darcy, Cillian Murphy, and has Harry Styles in it, surprisingly.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Interesting little story about the Harry Styles. Did you know that?
No.
So Christopher Nolan hired him to be an actor in that. He had no clue who he was. He never realized how famous he was. His daughter figured out that he had Harry Styles on it, and she went crazy because she was a One Direction fan. Mm-hmm. And Nolan, it wasn't until then that he realized how famous Harry Styles was. And here he is, putting him as a bit role, and a really good bit role in this film. So.
I will say that I am horribly disappointed that I watched this on my TV instead of seeing it on screen.
This film I saw on IMAX opening night.
Oh, jeez.
The IMAX around here typically shows stuff in IMAX 3D, and there's only usually one or two nights or showings that you can actually catch the 2D version of it. And so you got to be very careful, like looking to see, when is that 2D showing? Because once it's gone, you never get a chance again. And went opening night, saw an IMAX 2D, and the things that Nolan has been doing, and I think he started it with Dark Knight was the first time he started dabbling with IMAX scenes.
Right.
And him really just flexing his muscle with what he can do with IMAX. Just phenomenal shots in this film throughout. But the sound is...
Or the lack of sound.
Yeah, but every little piece of sound was accentuated to 100. So what are your thoughts and your feelings on this, Tony?
Oh, I like the film a lot. I saw it at home. Shouldn't have, but I made sure I had my headphones on so I can hear every little sound, every tick of the watch. And and I loved everything about it. I mean, I was surprised. I mean, I read the screenplay before, and that should be known. I read before I watch because I don't like surprises. But
It's a beautiful thing that Nolan does. He always has, you can't say it's a gimmick, but he always does something just slightly different than most normal filmmakers do in their films. And honestly, if you go through Christopher Nolan's repertoire of films,
right.
I mean, I can't pick out one that I say, this is a horrible film. He's just been constantly putting out film after film that is good. And he, as Tony just mentioned, the ticking of the clock, he took this little aspect of time and just turned it on its head to see how it would play out. And, Hans Zimmer, who has been his composer since Dark Knight,
right.
They've just been honing all these different sounds and different effects. And for this, it was simple. He just started out with a ticking clock, and then that set the tone of the whole movie. And, I've heard a lot of people after seeing this film that, I didn't get it. I don't see why it's so great. I don't see why it's a masterpiece. And I think it's a masterpiece in its simplicity of being able to tell a story of time from basically three different narratives.
Which a lot of people got confused with. I had a friend and my dad actually were both horribly confused after seeing the movie. Like, they had no idea what was going on, and they got confused with the storylines. I did not at all. For some reason, it didn't. I think maybe if you didn't...
if you're paying attention to the subtitles,
yes.
You get it pretty quick.
Well, I think at the
beginning...
beginning...
It tells you the time.
Yeah, and they show
Week,
you at the beginning.
Day, hour.
Yes. But that can be missed. That can be missed.
Even if you didn't see that, I mean, there's different stories there. You can tell there are three different, how would I say that? There's sequences, I guess, or segments. And there's one in the water, there's one in the air, and there's one on the ground. I mean, there's some overlap with the ground and the water, but they all tie together. I mean, you don't really have to be watching the subtitles in the beginning to...
Did you notice that also ties in with Winston Churchill's speech?
Yes.
At the end. In the land, in the sea, in the air.
Yes.
There's very purposeful choices that Nolan does that are just like kind of in your face. You're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it just kind of all whacks you at the end when the Churchill speech is playing.
I enjoyed Kenneth Branagh not trying to take over the movie and not overacting.
I think that is the key to the movie, is
his face.
There is not a lead actor.
Right.
The one who is in everything, pretty much, is... I didn't put his name on the list, but he barely said... I think he has a total of maybe 5 lines.
Okay.
You start with him being the only survivor as the rest of the guys around him get shot.
That was jarring to watch. That was jarring. Like, first thing seeing that, and then it's like... I call this film a less tense version of Saving Private Ryan, which is a totally different thing. But it's just... There was calm, and they're kind of goofing around, trying to get to where they're trying to get to, and then chaos hits. While Private Ryan just starts off slow, and then you hit D-Day. But they're totally different animals. There's an American, director versus British director, and it's nice seeing what the British have gone through. And I don't know if the British just have a thing where they're, I don't know how I can explain that, and I guess I should come back to that. But I just felt less tense. Like D-Day, Normandy Beach, and Saving Private Ryan, I was just tense the whole time. And I guess that's what Steven wanted, was that tension. But I didn't lose that. My shoulders were hunched during Private Ryan, and during Dunkirk, I could lower them. I wasn't as edgy.
Well, did anybody notice that it wasn't... There were some quiet moments.
Yeah.
I mean...
It was on purpose. I think his whole experiment with this was all about sound.
Yeah, it
wasn't about anything with film. It wasn't anything with story. It was all about sound and making you feel like you're in the airplane with the guy firing. Make you feel like you're in the water when they're, the trip's going under.
Somewhat, but it was also it was less quiet than that. I felt like if I was there would have been more sound.
The funny tidbit: the veterans from that say that the soundtrack was louder than the actual event. Like, the bombs and explosions and sinking was quieter than the soundtrack. Like, the soundtrack, the score, the sound design was louder. And they said that a lot of things were subdued, and it impressed them, and no one found that funny. Another thing, too, they shot at IMAX. There's a plane that went down in film. A lot of planes went down, but there's an IMAX camera in that plane, and the plane went down faster than they thought it would go down. So the footage was soaked with water, and Nolan, thinking top of his head, kept the film wet, and they shipped it to LA as fast as possible, and before it could dry out. And that footage from that sinking prematurely is actually in the film. So the camera got drowned, and they used that same footage because Nolan thought, keep the footage wet, keep the camera wet, keep everything wet, just ship it. And
That's interesting.
I mean, it's beautifully shot. I mean, my favorite shot ever in the film is the end when Tom Hardy's character is just gliding down.
Yep.
And that was real. It wasn't CGI. It was a real plane coming down, and that him pumping the wheels down. And
I think that's a good thing too. Is just everything was real.
Yeah.
Everything felt real. It didn't feel like you were taken out by like, oh, that was a weird CGI effect that wasn't really finished off in post. It was just a beautiful. It's a very simple story from beginning to end for me. You mentioned Kenneth Branagh in there. Just a very simple, understated, just play your role, be your role, don't take it over. But then you got somebody like you got Mark Rylance, who is a phenomenal theater actor. He was in Bridge of Spies, which was Spielberg's last film, and he just a phenomenal little piece that he's in there. And but to me, do you ever seen Peaky Blinders on Netflix?
No.
not.
Sidebar, Peaky Blinders, highly recommended. There's 3 seasons on there right now. Cillian Murphy. Fantastic. And in this film, he plays basically as close as you can get to the villain of the movie as to what happened in his resolution at the end. But Cillian has been Nolan's kind of little play toy since Dark Knight and being able to pop up in a couple of his films here. And I like what Nolan does. He finds those actors that are strong, that can pull out those little tiny little things and be able to play him to effect so that he doesn't stand out, so he doesn't play a lead role. He's a very solid supporting actor. And I think that's what sets apart a lot of Nolan's films, is that he pulls back those people that are so used to being lead actors and says, just be this person.
I also felt like, yes, with the sound, correct, but honestly, before the sound, the colors got to me. It did. Do you guys notice the color of the movie?
I didn't really notice the colors.
Really?
That didn't really stand out.
They were muted.
Yeah, they were, but not like pop. Like this is a different color scheme for this.
I thought they were beautiful.
It was.
I think the film was gorgeous, but in terms of cinematography, it doesn't hold a candle to 2049.
No. Well, no. I'm just saying.
We're all hoping
I
this is
kept
Oscars.
saying, look how beautiful it is. Look at that. I don't know. The eyes of these people. The blueness, and I don't know. Just.
That was my thing too. I didn't recognize Cillian in this film until I saw. It's weird to say, but I look at faces and I saw all that dirt on his face, and then took his lips, and I said, "Wait, that's Cillian." Like I knew he was in the movie, but I'm like, "Where is he? Where is he?" I'm like, "Oh, wait, that's him." And Mark, I know Mark from Broadway, Jerusalem. That was his Tony Award, and that was a phenomenal play. So Mark got me on Broadway during Jerusalem, and he got a Tony Award for that part. And then I've been following him ever since. And he got an Oscar, I think, last year or the year before.
He won last year for
British
Spies.
So yeah, he's finally getting his due, and people are noticing him, which is fantastic.
I'm kind of afraid that he's starting to become Hollywood's little it guy, but as long as he does solid work, I have nothing about watching something that he's in. And I think his role as the father and what he did with the ship, and it was just like
I didn't catch what he did at first. I read the screenplay, and I knew, but on film watching, I try to separate the screenplay reading from the movie, but I said he's taking the boat, and I said, oh wait, he doesn't want to be commanded, he doesn't want to be told what to do. But that little subtle, like, okay, we're leaving now, we're leaving, and then Tommy jumps on the boat with them. That was a small little thing, and that worked for me.
You have the whole ticking and the whole sound and everything is loud going throughout this whole film, to the point where they're riding on the train, and Harry Styles goes to talk to his brother. I can't really say his friend. I would call him his new brother. And all of a sudden the sound stops, the ticking stops, and it's just this completely quiet moment. And you realize, and then you have the Winston Churchill playing over the next part. For me, out of everything I've seen this year, I haven't seen Lady Bird, I haven't seen Three Billboards. This was the best picture for me out of everything I've seen this year. I love the quality of this film inside and out, and that's taking apart from my love for just Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer. There is nothing in Hans Zimmer's score that stands out. I've listened to it 3 or 4 times just to say, is there something there? It's not. This is just a very, I don't know if you can even classify it as an experimental piece for Hans Zimmer, because there's no main themes.
I did know it was Hans Zimmer, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kept saying, that's Hans. I think that's Hans. I said, who is it? And Jason's looking it up. Christopher Nolan. No, I meant the soundtrack. Who is it? Oh yeah, it's Hans Zimmer.
It's kind of like Steven and George relying on George.
John Williams.
John Williams.
Yeah.
John Williams. Let's go too.
Gotta love the horns in the background.
Well, we're in the city.
Yeah.
But to me, in terms of the score, there was nothing that was, there's nothing that's going to be played at the best of hits for Hans Zimmer in 10 years. It's just, it wasn't set out that way from the beginning, and I'm kind of glad it was, because it wasn't like no one thing in the movie put itself above another.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, it's Best Picture. Definitely not Best Score, but definitely Best Picture.
Are you going to see the other movies?
Before Oscar time, probably not.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff coming up that are on my list. However, if they end up in rental, maybe.
Have you seen Lady Bird?
I read the screenplay for it, and I was excited to see Lady Bird, but then I read the screenplay, and I was turned off from Lady Bird.
Great.
So I will see it just because I like Greta a lot, but
I'm going to see it.
I was like...
I'm one of those. I have to see all of them.
And also preface, or post-face, whatever the correct terminology of that would be.
Epilogue?
There are very, 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 very few films that I actually buy to keep in my collection.
Correct.
Dunkirk has been one of them. I went out on Friday, bought the film just so I can watch it yesterday.
Oh, because you don't rewatch movies.
I do not. There's probably about 20 movies that I've watched more than once.
Wow.
And that's taking out the Marvel. The Marvel things are just fun to watch. Those are kind of a...
Guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure, yeah. But Dunkirk was one of those ones that I felt like I had to put that one in my collection because it was good. And I just watched it yesterday, and I watched it again. I was like, this is fantastic. But any further thoughts on Dunkirk from either of you?
No.
All right. Anything else that popped your curiosity this week that you watched or listened to?
Well, I listen to audiobooks all day.
What did you listen to?
Well,
let me guess. Calling Me by Your Name.
Well, I started that last night. I've been re-listening to. I will say I want to give a bit of a shout out to a book that I did listen to, Rules of Civility by Amor Towles. He is probably more well known for The Gentleman in Moscow, but Rules of Civility is beautifully done. I spent my week re-listening to Jane Fonda's My Life So Far, which I really enjoy. And if anybody has any issue with Hanoi Jane, they would just have to listen to the book, so maybe they would understand a little bit more what happened there. And then I am listening to Just Kids for the second time. And yeah, those are the ones that I've been listening to. And then, yeah, I'm starting with my Call Me By Your Name, which so far is very good.
How about you, Tony?
Well, I'm a gamer, so I play a lot of video games in my spare time to help me unwind and relax a little bit. But recently, I would say like 2 years ago, I started noticing that a lot of video games and mobile games on my phones have very amazing scores, like music, like to the point where they're almost parallel great like movie scores. And just this week, I downloaded the score for Loner, which is a mobile game you can play on your Android or your iPhone. and it's a meditative kind of game where you're a pilot and you're basically flying into an abyss, and there's a lot of meditative, transcendental music to listen to, and you crash, you just restart all over again, and it puts you in a zone. It's very peaceful. I would play that game just for the music alone, actually, and it's just a really deep game, actually, and the story unfolds as you play, and it takes a while to get into it, but once you do, you won't want to put it down until your battery on your phone dies.
So it's definitely recommended.
Yes, definitely.
Well, this week I didn't have much time as I was getting things ready and put together for this podcast, but I did get notified on Spotify that Jack White put out some new music. He has a new album coming out March 23rd, Boarding House Ranch. I am a huge Jack White fan, probably in my top 5 people I listen to. So he put out a new single, Connected by Love and Respect, Commander. I'm kind of mixed on how I feel about this. His last album was Lazaretto, which I think was some of his best work that he's done. This does not feel like his best work, so I'm hoping there's some kickers in Boarding House Ranch that are there that are going to keep me. But I am excited that he's actually going on tour, and he's going to be coming to Rochester. So June 7th, we have an opportunity to see him, so I'm probably most likely going to see him because...
You're having a huge year. Yeah, Hans Zimmer, too, aren't you?
Hans Zimmer was last year.
Last year? Was that last year?
Yeah, it was last summer.
Oh, my gosh.
It'll be almost a year to the date.
I'm
I had very few people on my list of people that I want to see in concert, and Jack White was number 1, and Hans Zimmer was number 2, and the fact that I have back-to-back years, I can get them both off my list.
That's pretty awesome.
That's pretty awesome. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to his new album. Like I said, I hope there's something better than the 2 that they released on there. It's not looking good. I really, 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 really wish that him and Meg would get back together and do the White Stripes album, do something new with the White Stripes. I think he's at his best when he is with Meg. His solo stuff hasn't been great, except for Black Licorice. I love that song. I think it was just phenomenal.
Val, what are something you're looking forward to seeing before we meet up again?
I'm actually seeing or listening to or anything, correct? Anything.
Anything you want.
With the Audible has like a very minimal selection of plays that I can listen to. I just want to let you know. So the ones that I found, let's see here. So you can tell me whether you say skip it.
Okay.
So Dinner with Friends is on there.
Not bad.
Okay. And Prelude to a Kiss is on there.
That's actually quite good.
Okay. So I'll listen to that one first. And then actually there was a book of poetry that came out. This girl, she died in 1942, but her poetry, she was 24. I'm going to get you her name. One moment. Her name is Joan Murray, and she has a book coming out called Drafts, Fragments, and Poems, The Complete Poetry of Joan Murray. And I don't know, I'm just kind of really interested in looking into that. So those are the ones I'm looking forward to this week.
How about you, Tony?
I'm going to be continuing my run-through of Oscar contenders or just potentials. I mean, I know the nominations are coming out soon, but I like to watch them before they're tainted with the Oscar love, I guess. I heard about I, Tonya, so I'll be looking into that, reading that one first, then watching it. And whatever else, I guess, gets my fancy. But just getting that Oscar stuff out of the way so I can relax a little bit.
True.
Relaxation, what's that?
I am looking forward to something I have been tracking for probably 6 months now. The Alienist is coming on to TNT January 22nd.
Is that
That's
from the book?
Night.
The book?
I don't know. I don't read books.
I'm
being honest right now. I stay away from books and anything that will influence the way I watch a film or TV. And then if there is something based on it, I'll go back and read it after.
I believe it's a book. It's one of my good friend's her favorite book.
It's about a 19th century serial killer and the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this one's got Daniel Brew and Luke Evans and Dakota Fanning.
Wow.
I haven't seen anything with Dakota in it in many, many years. Daniel Bruhl has just been
He's been coming and rising.
Little bits. Luke Evans is a strong actor. Last thing I saw him on was Beauty and the Beast, but I mean, the guy puts on any role he's strong in.
I actually liked that role for him. It was interesting. Yeah. It was different.
So I'm really, really looking forward to this. And what's gotten me more aggravated or anticipation is every time I go to the theater, it's there. It's playing before a thing. It's like, oh, coming in. So it's like for the past 6 months, I've been doing nothing but hoping for this. And I'm just went and saw 12 Strong the other day, and I'm like, oh, January 22nd, it's finally here. I'm happy that, get to start watching it this week. And then the other one is a little, probably not one that I'd normally put on my list to be able to watch. I really don't go to the movie theaters to watch horror movies. If horror movies are anything, I'll watch them at home. I was kind of desensitized when I was a little kid by horror movies, so I don't get scared of anything, and they don't really mean a lot to me. But there's 2 movies coming out this year that have kind of piqued my interest, and it's mainly because of the casting in it. This one's got Helen Mirren and Jason Clarke in a horror story. Helen Mirren and Jason Clarke, 2 phenomenal actors that I'm curious to see what they're going to do with it. It could be a horrible movie, or it could be good. But, I mean, when really good, strong actors sign up for a horror movie, you kind of have to take notice.
Right.
And later in the year...
Isn't that Winchester?
Yes, Winchester. That's what I said.
Did you say Winchester?
I thought I said Winchester.
I thought you said it.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
We'll have to rewind that and see if I said it.
Well, now we've said it, so now everyone knows.
So Winchester, we'll provide a link into our notes to all these things as to where you can find a little bit more information about them. But again, I don't watch a lot of things with Helen Mirren in it because usually, it's like the Queen or, but
because it's usually like the Queen.
Well, she's come a long way too. She stopped taking her clothes off, which was kind of interesting. So.
Oh my God, you guys!
What?
This is ridiculous.
It's serious. I don't want to see her
take the Queen.
No.
Are you saying you didn't like her taking her clothes off?
No, I didn't. I'd rather she keep them on, even when she was younger.
Well, she was.
Caligula.
I have a book. It's very beautiful. She's beautiful.
She is, but I'm
not saying she's not beautiful. I'm just saying I just didn't enjoy it.
You didn't like the Queen?
It just bored me. I get bored easily.
Obviously. Moving on.
But, again, and so the other one that's tied in, A Quiet Place, it's got Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, and John Krasinski's, 3rd feature film. His first 2 were nothing to, hold a candle at, but, I mean...
They're together, right?
I think so.
Aren't they together?
I think so.
I don't know.
I think so.
They're married.
I think they're married, yeah.
Yeah.
So that one kind of piqued my interest. I'll probably wait for that one on video. But Winchester, there's not really much coming out in the theaters in the next couple weeks. So if I make it out to anything, that'll probably be the one thing that I go out and see.
February 2nd, Groundhog's Day.
Groundhog's Day.
My birthday. There you go.
So that about wraps up our show. It was a little bit longer than hopefully our show's going forward, but we had a lot to talk about today. We had to get you to knowing who we are and what we're about and where we want to go. Tony, where can we find you on social media going forward? I'm
all over the place, but you can find me on Twitter at SMTORCHIO. That's SMTORCHIO. That's my Twitter handle.
Val, where do you like to hang out on social media?
I don't hang out much. I'm on Twitter as PennyLane64. Pretty straightforward. So, yeah.
And I am pretty much GFMEDIA anywhere you go. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. And us, as a show, you can now find us at culturalstew.net. We'll be posting up some of our reviews that we've talked about today that will be a little bit more long form going forward. We'll hold the reviews until we release the episode so that you actually can have a little bit more in depth of what we think about it. That way going forward, we can just kind of give you our brief synopsis of how we're feeling about things going forward. You can also find us at culturalstewnet on Twitter and also Cultural Stew on Facebook. The music today, the intro and break music, is Please Listen Carefully by Jazir. And I'm going to take you out on Slow Burn by Kevin MacLeod.
All these were available through the Creative Commons license from freemusicarchive.org. And if you have any original music that you'd like to share with us that you think might be of interest, please contact us and let us know, and you might just hear your music on here. Later, catch you at the next show. If you've liked what you've heard, please consider sponsoring us on Patreon. Patreon is a creator support system that allows people to support the things they love and creators to continue doing what they love. Head on over to patreon.com/GFMedia and choose the Cultural Stew podcast levels to show your support for us.